I wish I had the ability to record and categorize all of the prayers that people offer every day, put them into little compartments and see where they fall and where they stack up. Without a doubt, the overwhelming majority of prayers would be prayers of petition, asking the Lord for things. Lord, give me this, grant me that, help me here or there. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with petitionary prayer. The Lord does tell us in the Lord's Prayer to pray, give us this day our daily bread. But hopefully there would be other prayers, too, that would be offered. Do we offer prayers of adoration? Just telling the Lord, Lord, I adore you. I thank you and I bless you just because you're God, just because you are all goodness. Or do we offer prayers of thanksgiving when he does answer a prayer? Do we thank him for that? Do we thank him even for the other things that we often don't realize in our lives that he's given us? And do we ever in our petitions pray for holiness, for faith? Lord, help me to see my sins and overcome them. Lord, help me to be the person you want me to be. Lord, give me true faith in you and help me to be a person who lives by faith. Jesus, at the conclusion of this parable, where he talks all about addressing the Father for all of our needs and our petitions, also mentions, but when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth? Are we people of faith? Sometimes I think when we talk about faith, we think it means, well, believing that God exists. Well, faith, of course, means more than that. It means trusting in God that my life is better when he takes care of me than when I try to take care of it myself. To do what the Lord calls me to do, knowing that his will is the best way for me to make my life fine and the world around me. And we often speak about taking a leap of faith. One of the most beautiful examples I found of it was in the movie Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. If you remember the scene towards the end where he has to go across this giant chasm, Indiana Jones, and enter a cave. And he's told he has to take a leap of faith. And they show him a picture of just stepping off the ledge into the chasm and having faith that he will not fall. And finally, after all of the fear about it, he finally does it, and of course it happens. A path miraculously appears for him. Sorry to give you a spoiler if you haven't seen it. And he's able to get across to the other side. But sometimes trusting in God can be just like that, a leap of faith. To say, Lord, this makes no sense to me. I can't understand why you would want it to be this way in my life. Why you would ask me to do this, why you're denying me this or whatever it may be. But Lord, I trust in you completely. I will take that leap of faith and I will put my heart and my life in your hands, knowing even if it makes no sense to me, my life is better off in your hands than in my own. And that can be the hardest thing for us to do. But once we do it, we find that peace. But taking that leap of faith and trusting God is not easy. Our young people who are here may appreciate Aladdin, the movie that's now also a Broadway show and another movie. One of the ways Aladdin wins Jasmine to himself is saying to her, do you trust me? And she has to put trust in him even though she sees no reason to trust this young man. But she does, and then everything from there takes off. Same thing with us. Trusting God is following him not when everything makes sense, but precisely when it doesn't. When what God is telling us to do does not make sense, but we say, okay, Lord, but I will trust in you. That's taking that leap of faith. And when we can trust in him, then we will find the peace, the joy that we are so looking for in life, the peace that only Christ can bring. May Jesus Christ be praised, now and forever. I have to keep my homily brief today because, unfortunately, I have to take a little of your time today. We have a little business that we have to do. You probably know once a year it is important that I share our financial situation with you. And normally I would do that somewhere in November and I could choose the Sunday I want. But this year, something different. The Archdiocese of New York now has started a program where all parishes every 5 years have to run an increased offertory campaign. And we were slated for this year, and I was told this weekend is the announcement weekend where we will begin our increased offertory campaign. And the reason the diocese is doing this is for a very practical reason. Sometimes people complain, they say, all my pastor ever talks about is money, and in some situations they're certainly correct. But there are other parishes where the pastor never talks about money. He doesn't feel comfortable talking about it. He knows the people don't want to hear it, so he never mentions anything. But then the parish suffers, and the money is not there to pay the bills, and they're in difficulty. So the diocese is now requiring us to do it once every 5 years just to make sure that pastors are addressing the financial needs of our parish. And when I became your pastor 11 years ago, one of the promises I made at my installation was that I would take care of the temporal goods of the parish, which means the finances, making sure the buildings are maintained properly and everything physical that we need to serve your spiritual needs here. So in today's bulletin, I have printed the financial report for the last fiscal year, and you can take it home and peruse it on your own and see where we stand. And of course, the big question that we would want to ask is, well, Father, since we're talking about the financial status of the parish today, what is our financial situation? How do we stand? Well, I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is this. Even though enrollment in parishes, attendance seems to be declining everywhere, and we're no exception to that, although our attendance at Sunday Mass is going down, our collection keeps going up. Last Sunday, we collected over $7,000, and there was no special event with extra people or anything like that to justify it. We just had a very good collection last week. And when you think about, we now have only half the people that were coming to church when I first came here 11 years ago. But back then, with double the amount we have now, we barely took in $3,000 a weekend. Now, we're routinely taking in the upper fives, and this past weekend being very good, up at $7,000. And that's because many of you have risen to the occasion. You understand the financial need that we have here, that the parish does not get any money from the government or outside sources, that all the money that we have to run our parish comes predominantly from the collection. Our fundraising helps when people give us money as part of a will. We get money from that. But by and large, the major chunk of it is what you give in the collection every week. And you have been tremendous with that. Last week, I had a meeting with the Vicar General, the head of finance for the diocese, and a few other bigwigs. And one of the things that we talked about, or that they mentioned, was how well St. Anne gives. That they realized our numbers, our collection is going up. And they also realize that per capita, you give better than many other parishes. We are well above the average of the per capita gift. And we are on the par financially in our collections with some parishes nearby who have 2, even 3 times the population that we do. So kudos to you for that. That is wonderful. And they are very excited about us downtown because of that. They know St. Anne's is taking our parish seriously. The bad news is that as good as that is, that our collection continues to increase, unfortunately, it's not keeping up with the rising costs. And every year, our request from the diocese is getting larger and larger. You may know that for a good number of years, long before I came here, St. Anne's has not been able to meet its bills just on the money we take in the collection. So we have to turn to the diocese for help. And through the Interparish Finance Program, they give us a grant every year of money that is raised through the Cardinal's Appeal to help parishes who are struggling. And last year, we had to ask the diocese for $120,000 to meet our bills. This coming year, we have to ask the diocese for $122,000. So it's continuing to rise. And that's my biggest concern, because you wonder, when will the diocese get to a point where they say, with all that you're asking and all the money that we're giving you, when do we reach the breaking point where they say we just can't justify anymore, especially since the money that's given is really meant for poor parishes, places that are in the poverty level, not for middle to upper middle class Dunwoody portion of Yonkers as we are. So while they love us downtown, the Cardinal is thrilled with everything he sees here. You do wonder, will we ever make the breaking point that they say, I'm sorry, we just can't help you, and you're going to have to radically cut back services. And I would dread to think what that would be. So the first need we have is to try to cut back on how much that we ask the diocese to give us every year. And if we can lower that number, then we're in good standing. Then things are turning around for us. Ministry programs and things that I would love to be able to give money to that I really can't do because of our financial situation. Some of them I have because I've said we just have to do it. When I first came here as pastor and looked at the budget, I was amazed to see that there was absolutely no line in the budget for ministry programs. And I say to myself, how do we call ourselves a parish when we have no money set aside for ministry? So immediately I put in a line from that, and of course had to take money from other places or ask people to give more, and thankfully the increased giving that came from our parishioners helped provide money. Two specific programs that would give, well, there's several, I'll talk about those in a minute, that would receive the money from that. So providing for ministries is important. And third, some of the things that are not urgent, that we can live without, but maybe we'd like to do if we had more money in the bank. I'm not asking for as much from the diocese. They might give me permission to do. One in specific, our sound system. It's not the worst in the world, but it's also not the best. Every once in a while it starts to hiss and crackle, and and it's annoying, and different people have given me different answers as to why they say it's happening. I just think it's because it's old and maybe needs to be replaced. But I did at one point check in to see what a new system would cost, and right away I turned to the best sound system in the Archdiocese, Monty Brothers, who do everything. I asked them for a proposal on it, and the proposal was $17,000. So obviously, I could not go and spend $17,000 when we're asking for $120 from the diocese. They would flag that right away, and I would get a phone call saying, Father, you just can't do things like that. Maybe if we were not asking for as much and we were able to turn it around and our request from them was a lot lower, they might say, kind of to reward us, okay, you've done well, treat yourself to a new sound system, go out and do it, we give you permission. I'd love to do that. So those are what we need to accomplish through increasing our offertory. And the way to go about it, I have a two-prong approach that I would like you to work with me on, that together we can accomplish this goal. One way to try to bring more money into the parish is to try to bring more people back into the pews. As we know, numbers are going down all over for a variety of reasons. One very practical one is that elderly parishioners are passing away and they're not being replaced by young people coming to church. The largest growing religious denomination in America, as they call it, is what's known as the nuns, N-O-N-E-S. People with no religious affiliation whatsoever. Again, there's reasons for that perhaps we could discuss at another time, but we need to reach out to our young people and convince them of why they need to be here with us at worship. And I especially want to try to target our young people because that's our future. I'm speaking specifically of the college and post-college years. And two things that we have been doing that have been helping, one on the broad and one on the specific, our Christ Life program. Christ Life has been a wonderful success for us here at St. Anne's. We had our first fruits a couple of years back, a young adult who came with his girlfriend, and after the second session said, this is for me, this is what I want to be baptized. We've had several other people who have gone through the program because of the request of members of their families who have come through it and decided to return to worship. So that's one of the ways we're working on trying to bring more people back into the pews. And another one specifically aiming at the young is our young adult group, Arise, who was just present with us for the 10 o'clock Mass today. One of my favorite memories, or one of my most joyful times, shall I say, as your pastor over these 11 years, was the day when one of our young men, Nico Alatencio, who was an extraordinary minister here in the parish, he was our master of ceremonies when he was in high school, came to me and asked to have an appointment. He says, Father, can I sit down and talk with you about something? And he looked so serious about it, I was worried. I thought he was going to tell me something was wrong. And I was worried. I said, what does he have to tell me? But he sat down and said, Father, he says, another one of his classmates who's also had been one of our servers and is now an extraordinary minister and lector here, Mark McAllen. He said, Mark and I were sitting down and wondering, Father, would you give us permission to start a young adult group? Would I give them permission? I was jumping out of my skin with joy at the thought that they wanted to start a young adult group. That is the hardest ministry to get off the ground in any parish. Even more difficult than high school ministry is college and post-college years, the 20s and the early 30s. And so I gave them an enthusiastic start, and they did very well with it. They got other people involved. They came to karaoke last night and had a blast, absolutely enjoying singing and having a lot of fun. And they have prayer meetings where they discuss spiritual topics. They're also having open gyms where they figured out that Some people who maybe are not ready to come to church yet, they're trying to build bridges with them by bringing them to play basketball or something else, and hoping that little by little they might be able to build up a desire in them to say, why don't you just come to Mass, or one of our spiritual things. So they're trying very hard with that, and they're working closely with the Archdiocese and doing a great job. However, I've discovered that they're providing a lot of supplies and things that they need to do it, and they're spending everything out of their own pockets. And I don't want them doing that. I'd like to give them a budget to do that. So if we had more money in the collection, I could give them a budget and say, hey, go out and provide the things you need to do this very important ministry for us. I even started a podcast because I know young people are into podcasts these days. The older generation, we might say, what the heck is a podcast? It sounds like something you throw out in the water. But no, young people are interested in it. And so I put together a podcast called We Need God that is specifically addressed to young people. And I've asked them to share it with any of their friends that they know are looking for answers but are so confused and have no idea where to get the truth from. So we're trying very hard with that. So that's one of the avenues. The one approach, or the one front, if you will, is trying to bring more people into church. Naturally, more people in church means more people giving us money to help run the parish. The second, of course, is to look at our own giving from the people who are already here and to see what we can do to increase our offering every Sunday. And in parishes, I always find there are three types of people when it comes to the collection. One is what I call the heavy hitters, and that is the generous people, especially those who have financial means. God has blessed them with a good financial situation, and they give generously to the parish, and they say to me, Father, God has blessed me with money, and this is my gift back to God, that I am sharing this with the parish. And they are the ones who are the mainstay, the ones basically supporting St. Anne's. And there are many of you who fall into that category. That's why our gifts are so much higher per capita than many other parishes, because there are more of you here at St. Anne's who do that than in many other parishes. So that's wonderful news. Then there are other people who would love to be in that position. They'd love to be able to give the way the more wealthy people can, but they're struggling financially. And they know every week, every month, it's a struggle just to meet the bills. And they don't know where they're going to do to find the money for the taxes and for the rent and everything else they have to pay. And they say to me, Father, I wish I had it. I would give it to you. If I win the lottery, you have nothing to worry about because I'll give half to St. Anne's. And I know they mean that. They mean it with an honest heart. And to them, I always say, if you're honestly doing the best you can, then please, I don't want you losing a night's sleep over how you can find a way to help St. Anne's all the more. Then we remember the widow's mite. As long as your gift is the best you can do, even if it's not much, we're grateful for whatever you can give. And then there's a group of people in between who largely, many of them probably think they're in one or the other of those camps. Either they think they're giving very generously and maybe discover they're really not giving the way they could be giving, or others who think they're in the poverty level and maybe really are not as poor as they think they are. And a good portion of that is people that I don't fault it. It's just for whatever reason, it has never sunk home that all of us have to do our job to try to support the parish. And every year when we'll talk about finances, there'll be a lot of people who kind of think that the pastor is talking to the person sitting next to them or the one behind them, and don't quite realize, it just never dawns on them, that I'm talking to everyone, every individual, about giving to the best of our ability. And just to give you a couple of examples of things I've come across over the years, I remember one man once who every week his envelope had $1 in it. Now, of course, if he were poor and that was the best he would offer, could possibly offer the widow's mite, and we were grateful for that. Except I discovered that this man was driving a Lincoln Continental. Yeah, so fortunately, I had a good relationship with him, and I was able to say, hey, this is your car? He says, yeah. I said, well, if you can afford this car, why do you only put $1 in your envelope every Sunday? Do you remember when I've talked about stewardship, all of us doing our best to give to the parish? You can do better than $1. There's no way you can tell me before God that $1 is all you can possibly afford when you can afford a car like this. Oh, really? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I guess it just never dawned on him. So the next week he started putting $5 in the collection. Now, you could look statistically and say he increased his gift by 500%, but I'm still thinking even $5, come on, it should be better than that. Another gentleman, again, a nice, wonderful, well-intended person, was bragging to me once about how rich he is. And he says, Father, $100 bills for me are like singles for you. I can throw $100 here or there and not even miss it. That's how much money I have. Except that we discovered he put only $5 a week in the collection. Now that would be like you putting a nickel in the collection every Sunday. Would any of you insult God so much as to put only a nickel in the collection and say, that's all I could afford? Maybe that man, if he can throw $100 a bill around like we're throwing ones, well then maybe he should be putting $500 a week or even more in the collection. So that's the point. Are we all giving according to our ability, or do we think my gift is good enough for me? And the way to find out, if we're not sure about where we fall in that, there's a very easy way to find out. And I'd ask you all to prayerfully ask yourself this question today and throughout this course of this week. When I give my money to the parish, whether it's in the collection basket, in an envelope, in automated giving, how do I decide how much to give? Have I prayerfully sat down and looked at my finances and said, based on what God has given me, this is my fair gift to the parish to make sure that St. Anne's is here for me? Or are we just in a rote habit of picking up a $5 bill and throwing it in the envelope without thinking twice about it? Do we prayerfully consider it, or is it just a reflex action? That's what I would like everyone to ask themselves today. Ask yourself how you decide how much you're putting in. And if you honestly before God realize, you know what, maybe I haven't been giving what I can give, maybe my gift should be more, then would you be willing to do so, to make it more? Our campaign, those of you who are registered parishioners should have received a postcard in the mail this past week. If you didn't receive a postcard, that tells me that you're not registered in our new online database. So if you didn't, please go to our website, the address is in the bulletin, and make sure you register for our parish so you can get updated on all the things we have. But you received a postcard, which is a smaller version of this, which is in our bulletin today. And the name of the program of this increased offertory campaign is A Coffee a Day for Our Parish. Not asking people to make dramatic changes, but little sacrifices that together would make a big difference for us. The equivalent of one coffee a day or something of that in the course of a week to give to the parish. And the suggestion that we're giving is asking everybody if they would consider increasing their gift to the parish by 20%. Now, that may sound like a big number right away, but if you look at it, it really isn't. For people who are giving $5 a week, that would be, can you give $6 a week? If you're giving $10 a week, could you increase it to 12, 20 to 24, etc., down the line? It's really not a great amount that we're asking from any individual person here or there. Yet, if we put it all together, if everybody were to give even 20% more, we would have an extra $1,500 every week in the collection. Over the course of 52 weeks in a year, you do the math, and we would be in a much better financial situation. So I would ask if everybody would prayerfully this week consider your gift. You know, unfortunately, I've come across one or two people here or there that I've heard through the grapevine who have told other people they've been here for years as parishioners in St. Anne's, and they don't give anything in the collection. For some reason, they have exempted themselves. They've decided, I don't have to give to St. Anne's. Well, why not? Why do they give themselves an exemption? Yes, they do. Every one of us has a responsibility to give to the best of our ability. Those who have more, we'd ask to give more. Those who are struggling, whatever you can. But nobody should exempt himself from giving to the parish. And quite frankly, usually the people who do exempt themselves are the ones who complain the most if a service has to be denied because we can't afford it. But they'd be the ones to come to me and say, oh, come on, Father, it's only money. And I say, all right, good. Well, then you give me the money and I'll buy it. Oh, no. I don't want to give you the money. I just want you to find it somewhere in the millions they assume we have somewhere in the bank. And if we have millions in the bank, I'd like to know where they are because, folks, they're just not there. So during this week, we'd ask you to prayerfully consider what gift you can give to the parish to improve our financial situation here. Next Sunday, when you come to Mass, you'll be given an envelope, just like we do for the Cardinal's Appeal, but we'd ask you to write your commitment in, what you're willing to give from now on, and just hand it in, and we'll keep you updated with the results after that. So I thank you for listening to me this morning. I know I would much prefer to talk about the gospel than finances, but you've been very generous in the past. I'm grateful to you for that. I know you will rise to the occasion as you always do. I thank you for the generosity you will show. And let's make sure we all do everything we can to help St. Anne's be financially stable and being able to be here and provide for your spiritual needs for many years to come. May God bless you all.